Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever time zone you're joining us from. Welcome into Spaceflight Now's live coverage of the latest mission from Vandenberg Space Force Base. I'm Will Robinson Smith, reporter with Spaceflight Now. It's good to have you with us on this Wednesday, October 15th. We are broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. SpaceX is currently fueling its Falcon 9 rocket in anticipation of launching the mission that was scrubbed yesterday due to some unfortunate weather out there at Vandenberg, but things are on track now. The company posted to its social media uh, on X saying that all systems are looking good and weather is trending favorably for today's launch of the U.S. Space Development Agency's Tranche 1 Transport Layer C mission, the latest batch of satellites that are heading up in support of the SDA's constellation in low Earth orbit. The satellites flying today belong or were manufactured by Lockheed Martin. And this is the second time that a batch of 21 satellites are heading up into LEO in support of this constellation called the Proliferated Warfighter Space Architecture, or PWSA. We'll, of course, talk more about this mission as we roll on through the count, but as we're getting things rolling here with 28 minutes on the clock, I want to start by thanking the 800 plus of you who are watching along with us live this evening. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button and sharing the stream, allowing some more folks to find their way into our live launch coverage tonight. Of course, being that this is a West Coast venture, our photography team has this mission off. But if you're not following the fellas, they'll be back in action in the pre-dawn hours tomorrow morning in support of the planned launch of the Starlink 10-52 mission from here in Florida. You can find them at their handles here on X. John is at John Pisani Photo. Michael is at MD Kane Jr. and Adam at A Burn NYC. Also, be sure to follow Spaceflight Now simply at Spaceflight Now. You can also find us on Threads, Facebook, Blue Sky, and Instagram by just looking up Spaceflight Now. Our editor, Stephen Young, is running the technical operations for our broadcast today. I also want to thank our moderators who are helping us out in the live chat. See, we've got Aussie Space Girl, Rick Donner, holding it down for us at the moment. If you see any of the other mods cruise on in throughout the course of the countdown, be sure to give them a big old Spaceflight Now hello. Also, one of our channel members, Cumulus Granatus, is in the chat with us today, helping to answer folks' questions as they come up. Speaking of channel members, we certainly can't do this without the ongoing support from our wonderful channel member community here on YouTube. So thanks to folks like the Rocket Girl, Distributor 69, Skunk Hogger PS4, Bill and Lauderdale, Rare Brad, and many, many others. Sue Straub, good evening to you. My honey, hello. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, which is shop.spacelightnow.com. Access to member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our members-only Discord server, and of course the ability to watch all of our live launch liftoff moments from here in Florida in 4K. Last little bit of housekeeping. If you have a comment or question about this mission or other goings-on in the realm of space or spaceflight, you can use the YouTube Super Chat feature to have your comment or query elevated for possible discussion, assuming, of course, that your comment or question is appropriate to be read aloud during our broadcast. And not only will you be giving us some interesting things to talk about as we cruise on through the count, but you'll also be supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now. And that, my friends, is very much greatly appreciated. To that end, want to thank channel member Stephen Strickland for the $10 super chat. Thank you, Stephen, who says, "Thank you, Spaceflight Now team." Very kind words here. Superior, high quality, factual, and interesting reporting, media presentation, and coverage. It is very kind of you to say. We certainly appreciate that. Also, thanks to the Kaiser 2023 for a $5 super chat, who says, "Mods, make the chat. Godspeed to the men and women in service." And yes, the constellation that has been the goal of the Space Development Agency, this Proliferated Warfighter Space Architecture, PWSA, has been the goal for the Space Development Agency since they were established back in 2019. For those of you who have been following their progress so far, there was a demonstration set of satellites that were launched as part of what they called Tranche 0. Those were always meant to be demonstrator satellites for the broader capabilities that they're looking to bring to bear with this burgeoning constellation that will consist of eventually hundreds of satellites. Tranche 1, as the name suggests, is just the first iteration of this constellation, broken up into a few different components, and we'll try not to get too lost in the weeds with the jargon, but this is the Tranche 1 transport layer. This series of satellites is designed to further secure communications for members of the U.S. Armed Forces and our allies in order to be able to communicate securely through systems like Link 16 beyond line of sight. We're T-minus 23 minutes and counting, so in about 19 minutes or so, a little bit less, we should get, actually considerably less, about 13 minutes or so, we should have eyes on the Falcon 9 out there at Vandenberg Space Force Base. Since this is a customer mission, SpaceX will start giving pad-level views about 10 minutes prior to liftoff, assuming that all is functioning as intended. But here's a look at the Falcon 9 rocket that is supporting today's mission. SpaceX is using the first stage booster with the tail number B1093, which is going to be flying for a 7th time today. It actually launched the previous batch of Tranche 1 transport layer satellites. That was the T1TL-B mission. The satellites manufactured by York Space Systems. There's another look at that Falcon 9 standing out there at the pad. You can see by looking at the rocket's second stage that there's the gray protective band that is seen on a number of missions, usually indicative of a longer coast phase, potentially either in direct sunlight for a prolonged period of time or in the Earth's shadow. Regardless, it is designed to keep the propellant at the correct temperature during the course of the mission and prior to the deployment of the satellites on board. You can see some clouds offshore in this photo here. Weather was the sticking point yesterday, which is why the launch was scrubbed, and SpaceX is back at it again today. Taking a live look now at the most recent weather loop from the GOES West satellite. You can see there's a nice pocket of clear around the area where Vandenberg Space Force Base is situated. So weather not expected to be an issue with today's Falcon 9 flight. Certainly good news. So we had a number of folks in the live chat who are checking in from Arizona. Given the time of day that this rocket is launching, don't think you'll be able to see this one, unfortunately, from your neck of the woods. It's probably going to be a bit too bright. You really want a just post-sunset launch to get that really nice jellyfish effect, or even when it's darker, so you can see the plume as the rocket makes its ascent from the pad. Regardless, we should have pretty good views from the onboard and pad-level cameras provided by SpaceX today. Taking a look at our live chat, as SpaceX is now 20 minutes away from the liftoff of this rocket. It's been on the screen, but I haven't actually said it verbally, so those who are more listening along than watching intently. Liftoff for this mission set for 4:06 p.m. Pacific, 7:06 p.m. Eastern, 23:06 UTC for those joining around the world. If for whatever reason SpaceX is once again unable to launch today, I believe they do have another backup opportunity scheduled for tomorrow, though they have not said specifically when the T0 for a 24-hour backup opportunity would take place. Taking a peek at the live chat, want to thank channel member Joni for being a member with us at the mission specialist level now for 10 months. Thank you so much for sticking with us, Joni, who says, thanks for all the streams. Also want to welcome in new channel member, but longtime friend of the channel, Mr. Jonathan McDowell, joining us with membership at the pad leader level. Good to see you again virtually, Jonathan. And as a little bit of a teaser, we were actually talking with Jonathan earlier today for a story we'll be publishing later this week. So be sure to hit that subscribe button and tune in back for that bit of coverage. I'll leave the subject of the story as a bit of a tease for now, but you'll want to tune back in when we've got that up on the channel. As far as the Falcon 9 rocket supporting today's mission, let's go ahead and step through our countdown timeline. Just let you know the milestones that have already come and gone and what is still ahead for SpaceX in the fueling campaign for its workhorse vehicle. Of course, things begin where they typically do, with the go-ahead for the start of fueling. Happens nominally at the T-minus 38-minute mark. SpaceX does its readiness poll electronically. We do know that that go-ahead was given, so tanking of the rocket began, as it always does, for a Falcon 9 at T-minus 35 minutes with a loading of RP-1, a rocket-grade kerosene, on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages. At the same time, liquid oxygen began flowing on board the Falcon 9's first stage. T-minus 30 minutes is when SpaceX began loading a cryogenic helium on the pressure vessels for the Falcon 9's first stage. Same was true in the second stage a few minutes afterwards. That helium is important, of course, because it's used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. T-minus 23 minutes is when second stage RP-1 loading wrapped up. Then at T-minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds is the strong back chill down process. SpaceX thermally conditions the feed lines there at the pad prior to second stage liquid oxygen load beginning. Had we eyes on the Falcon 9 rocket during the past few minutes, we would have seen the so-called big vent from the strong back. That process is just wrapping up in about 10 seconds, setting the stage for that LOX to start flowing on the rocket's upper stage in just about 30 seconds from now. Moving along, the next mission milestone after that is coming up at T-minus 7 minutes when the engine chill sequence begins. SpaceX flows a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, helping to protect the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during startup. 6 minutes before flight, the first stage kerosene tank is full. And at T-minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strong back retract sequence get underway. First, the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings will open up, and then the strong back, otherwise referred to as the transporter erector, will recline about 13 degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. Here at Vandenberg, it stays in that position up to and through liftoff. 3 minutes out, the first stage liquid oxygen tank is full. Same is true on the second stage about a minute afterwards. At that point, the Falcon 9 rocket is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. And the final 60 seconds before flight, when we hear the call that the Falcon 9 is in startup, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. At the same time, the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. The SpaceX launch director will give their final go for launch call at T-minus 45 seconds. The engine ignition command is issued at T-minus 3 seconds. And if all 9 Merlin engines are healthy and ignite as expected, and there are no ground or rocket system issues, command will begin for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 rocket for a T0 liftoff, once again targeting that departure from Space Launch Complex 4 East at 4:06 p.m. Pacific, 7:06 p.m. Eastern, 23:06 UTC for our friends around the world, just about 14 and a half minutes from now. Calling upon some visual aids for this mission while we wait for pad level views of the Falcon 9 rocket. Here's a look at a couple of mission patches related to this particular Falcon 9 flight. Of course, on the left is the general mission patch related to Tranche 1 for the Space Development Agency. The one to the right is designed by SpaceX graphic artists specific to this mission. Again, as you can see, this is the Tranche 1 Transport Layer number C mission. You may be thinking to yourself, well, we've seen T1TL-B last month and now T1TL-C. Did we just miss T1TL-A? The answer to that is no, that mission has not yet flown. The Space Development Agency is planning on a roughly monthly launch cadence, and these first 3 batches of satellites, we were told by a spokesperson with the U.S. Space Force's Space Systems Command that the first 3 missions are able to launch in whichever order. Didn't really matter, just whichever series of satellites was ready to go first that determined who stepped up to the plate initially. So York Space Systems was first up to bat, followed by Lockheed Martin Space here. And Northrop Grumman, who's the 3rd manufacturer of these Tranche 1 transport layer satellites, will presumably be the ones launching next month, though the Space Development Agency hasn't specifically said that just yet. On the left is a closer look at the payload fairing that you saw in that initial slide of the Falcon 9 rocket. A look at the transport layer mission patch that is on board one half of the Falcon 9's payload fairings. To the right of that is a look at one of these satellites that'll be flying on board the mission, courtesy of Lockheed Martin. Here's a look at what the full stack is like before they were encapsulated inside the Falcon 9's payload fairings and, of course, integrated onto the rocket, rolled out to the pad, and brought into launch position. Here's an image of them side by side. This is a look at them inside Lockheed Martin's facilities before they were transported to Astrotech. This is Lockheed's Satellite Processing and Delivery Center in Colorado. Here's another image of those, but with a human for another sense of scale of how large these satellites are. One last look at the stack as Lockheed Martin was going through its test campaign in preparation for this mission, and these satellites were delivered back in September in preparation for this mission that is now just under 11 minutes away from departure from Space Launch Complex 4 East Vandenberg. Time now T-minus 10 minutes and counting. Should be getting some pad level views from SpaceX here momentarily. And of course, Once those are available, we'll be sure to bring them in as soon as possible. While we wait for that, just want to give you a brief overlook of where this Falcon 9 rocket's going to be flying once it leaves the pad. Talking a little trajectory here. Falcon 9 rocket is going to be heading on a southerly trajectory once it leaves Space Launch Complex 4 East in about 9.5 minutes as planned. Following stage separation, the first stage booster, B-1093, will target a touchdown on the drone ship, called Of Course I Still Love You, positioned out in the Atlantic Ocean. This will happen roughly 8.5 minutes after a liftoff. And given this is a mission for the Space Development Agency, while we've seen a couple of photos now of what the satellites look like, typically the customer, in this case, the SDA, will request that SpaceX not show upper stage views from the Falcon 9 during the actual live broadcast. So that pattern, coupled with the fact that SpaceX's pre-launch timeline post liftoff doesn't include anything past first stage landing, would suggest that we likely won't see those satellites live when the views from the rocket become available. One last thing to note, SpaceX also will intend to recover the fairing halves on this mission, as it typically does. The company is working to certify both its first stage boosters as well as its fairing halves for up to 40 missions each. And we've got our views now of the Falcon 9 rocket against some beautifully blue skies there at Vandenberg. So for those who are in the most immediate vicinity, should be a pretty nice view of the Falcon 9 rocket as it takes flight. It's reflected against the sun, but you can see that mission patch that I showed you a still image of earlier. Tranche 1 ultimately has 10 missions that will be flown by SpaceX in order to fill it out. And this is the second so far. Again, the SDA is planning for a roughly monthly cadence for its low Earth orbit constellation. SpaceX commentator noting that, as you can see and probably can predict, the weather continues to be good and favorable for liftoff coming up in just about 7 minutes. At this point, the engine chill sequence should be just getting underway, where SpaceX is flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, hoping to protect those engines from thermal shock at startup. Less than 7 minutes on the clock. Want to thank the more than 2,700 of you who are watching along with us live here this evening. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button and sharing the stream, allowing some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage. SpaceX giving a graphical tour around the rocket, so we'll go ahead and lean on their graphics to talk about the launch vehicle. Falcon 9 stands 70 meters or 229 feet in height, has a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. Again, the booster flying for its 7th time is B-1093. It burns rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen, producing 1.7 million pounds of thrust at liftoff. You can see those black carbon fiber legs that will be used to land the booster on the drone ship. Of course, I Still Love You. Above the first stage, oh, there's the drone ship I was just mentioning. Is a live look from the drone ship, so should be a pretty nice view of booster landing out there. A little bit cloudy in the recovery zone, but the seas look pretty calm, which is good. As you can see with the graphic on the screen, the upper stage of the Falcon 9 rocket is powered by that Merlin vacuum engine, which produces more than 220,500 pounds of thrust. Given that SpaceX hasn't divulged a whole lot about this mission, we can't say with 100% certainty how many burns of the upper stage will occur prior to deployment of the 21 satellites from Lockheed Martin. Strong back retraction is just about to begin, though. SpaceX will punch into just beneath those payload fairings for the opening of those clamp arms. Again, here at Vandenberg, the strong back will recline about 13 degrees away from the rocket and stay in that position up to and through liftoff. Just start to see through the vapor there that the clamp arms are opening up, and it'll be much clearer when the strong back starts to pull away from the rocket. Starting to really see some movement there. Less than 4 minutes to go. Coming up in about 1 minute from now, the first stage liquid oxygen tank will be full, and the same will be true on the second stage about a minute after that. SpaceX has confirmed loading of the first stage LOX tank has wrapped up. Second stage LOX load is nearly complete, just about 30 seconds to go.
Weather is still looking green, and the range is...
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
There's that LOX load completion. Weather is currently looking green, and the range is ready to support our T0 of 4:06 p.m. Pacific time.
That additional venting you're seeing from the strong back are the ground gas closeouts as SpaceX releases the remaining liquid oxygen from the feed lines there at the pad, closing in on the final minute before liftoff.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
And we're now just awaiting the SpaceX launch director to give their final confirmation that they are, in fact, go for launch, coming in the next few seconds.
This is the mission director. Go for launch.
And with that good confirmation that they are a go for launch, we're going to step back on our commentary for the final 30 seconds and be back with you on the other side of liftoff.
T-minus 3 seconds. T-minus 15 seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. And liftoff of Falcon 9. Go SpaceX, go SDA.
Vehicle is pitching downrange.
MOD chamber pressures are nominal.
At T plus 30 seconds and counting, Falcon 9 has successfully lifted off from Slick 4E at Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. We've got a great view of the rocket today. In case you are just joining us, this is the Space Development Agency's Tranche 1 mission, and we just had an on-time liftoff today.
Power and telemetry nominal.
Nominal liftoff today at 4:06 p.m. Pacific Time. Coming up next, the vehicle will be passing through Max Q, which is the point in the mission profile where the vehicle
Vehicle is
experiences...
supersonic.
Max Q is the point in the mission profile where the vehicle experiences the greatest amount of aerodynamic pressure.
Max Q.
Falcon 9 has now passed through that period of Max Q. So coming up next, we'll have several events happening in quick succession, starting with MECO, then stage separation, then SES-1. Main engine cutoff, or MECO, is where all 9 Merlin 1D engines shut down to slow the vehicle down in preparation for stage separation, which is where the first stage separates from the second stage. Following this, the MVAC engine on the second stage will light, which is called out as second engine start, or SES-1. This engine burn will last for several minutes and propel the second stage and the payload to orbit. In addition to these major events, the fairing halves will separate about 30 seconds after SES-1. And as a reminder, we will not have any views of Falcon 9's second stage or the payload today at the request of our customer. So we should be coming up on MECO in 15 seconds here.
MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC startup.
And some good calls, good visuals from the ground tracking cameras there. You can see those cold gas thrusters hard at work there on the booster B-1093. Hypersonic grid fins now deploying. Fairing jettison is coming up here in about 10 seconds. Though we won't actually see those fairings jettison. Should hear that call out.
Fairing separation confirmed.
And good confirmation of fairing jettison. They will splash down in the waters of the Pacific Ocean a little bit further downrange from where the booster is set to land on the drone ship called Of Course I Still Love You. Seeing just off the edge of the grid fins the Channel Islands as the booster continues its climb. Hasn't quite reached its apogee. Looks like the booster today is topping out at about 127 kilometers in altitude. Now it's making its slow, initially, descent towards the drone ship. As part of its return to that vessel, it will perform a 3-engine entry burn to dramatically slow the vehicle down once it starts picking up speed. That entry burn set to begin at roughly T plus 6 minutes and 33 seconds in the count and will last less than 30 seconds in total. As we're waiting for the start of the entry burn, which should come about, you're just looking up through the inner stage here, the top of the booster. I want to give a quick but big thank you to channel member Artemis, upgraded now to the launch director level and very generously gifted 100 Spaceflight Now memberships and a $100 super chat on top of that. Big thank you for all the support, Artemis. Really, really do appreciate that this Wednesday evening. Booster's flight termination system has been safed, and the entry burn is now underway. You can follow the telemetry data for the booster on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
And with the conclusion of the first stage's entry burn, that now sets things up for the start of the landing burn, which will call upon just the center Merlin engine. That burn set to begin a little bit past the 8-minute mark in today's mission. We're less than a minute away from that burn starting. A successful touchdown today would mark the 157th good touchdown on that particular drone ship and the 518th booster landing for SpaceX to date. Booster traveling now below the speed of sound as it's about to pass through that cloud layer, still on track to touch down on the drone ship, completing its 7th trip to space and back.
We should be hearing that call out for the first stage landing burn in a few moments from now.
Stage 1 landing burn.
And there's that call out. This is the final burn that this booster will see before landing.
Landing light deploy.
I'm back shut down.
Stage 1 landing confirmed.
Some awesome views there of the grid fins on our way down. And that marks another successful landing of our Falcon 9 rocket. This is the 7th launch.
Nominal orbit insertion.
This is the 7th launch and landing for this first stage. Now, as a reminder,
Good touchdown for B1093, and as we've not been seeing, of course, the upper stage at the request of the Space Development Agency. So SpaceX about to wrap things up. The Space Development Agency will also be confirming successful deployment of its 21 satellites sometime after they do deploy and acquisition of signal is acquired. Realize that's a little bit redundant, but there you go. A nice view of the booster there to close things out from SpaceX's perspective. And a reminder that this is not the only mission that we're tracking from SpaceX in the next about half a day. Coming up tonight in the overnight hours from here in Florida, we've got a launch of a Falcon 9 rocket with SpaceX's own Starlink satellites, 28 of those heading up into a low Earth orbit on the Starlink 10-52 mission. And of course, we'll have our photographers out and about ready to capture that mission, and be sure to join us for live coverage beginning about 1 hour prior to liftoff. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell so you're notified when we do begin our live coverage on the off chance if SpaceX were to once again shift the T0 for that mission. Closing things out now with a look at our mission stats as they currently stand. Before I do, just a brief thank you, and a sincere thank you, though, to Daniel H. for gifting a Spaceflight Now membership, Michael McGroy for gifting 5 Spaceflight Now memberships. So to our 6 newest gifted members, in addition to the 100 from Artemis earlier, welcome aboard to all of you. We're very glad to have you with us. And if you haven't already, be sure to thank Daniel, Artemis, and Michael in the live chat. And we hope you decide to stick around beyond the month that you were just gifted. Now then, to the mission stats as they currently stand. As previously mentioned, that was the 7th flight of the Falcon booster 1093 in the SpaceX fleet. This was SpaceX's 546th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 129th of the year so far. This was the company's 165th orbital launch within the last 365 days, the 155th from this particular pad, and the 223rd overall orbital launch that Slick 4 East has seen. Here's a look at the bar chart, comparing this year to years gone by, very close to catching the total number of launches accomplished in 2024. Moving on to some recovery stats, this was the 157th good landing on the drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. That also marked the 422nd drone ship landing for SpaceX, and the 518th Falcon booster landing as well. Finally, with some industry stats, this was the 50th orbital launch from California, with all but one being Falcon 9 rockets. This was the 136th orbital launch from U.S. soil, the 148th from U.S. Rocket Company, and the 232nd orbital launch around the globe. There have been 5 mishaps clocked so far this year, and here is where the pie chart now currently stands. As we wrap things up, also want to thank K2 Hat for a $10 super chat. Thank you, K2. Who says, thanks for mentioning you could see Starship from Cape Kennedy the other day. Nice callback there. I went outside and saw it too. Thanks for the good coverage again. And hello from Mico, Florida. Glad you got to see it with your own eyes. And yeah, very cool to see from the press site and from a lot of places around central and southern Florida, the flight of Starship Flight 11. Also want to thank Josh King, who's been a member with us now for a full 3 years, 36 months. Hello, Will, and Spaceflight Now. It's been a while. Congrats to SpaceX on the final V2 launch of Starship. Can't wait for V3 and go Falcon 9. And closing us out, want to thank channel member Macaw SJ for being a member with us now for 7 months at the pad leader level. Says, thank you, Will, Mod Squad, Cumulus Granatus, and Spaceflight Now crew. Thank you for the kind words, Macaw. Glad to have you sticking around with us. And with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up on this Tranche 1 transport layer mission. Thanks to our moderators, Aussie Space Girl and Rick Donner, for helping us out in the chat. Thanks to all of our mods who are able to be with us for all these launches at extremely odd hours. Really makes things go much, much smoother. Also, thanks to Cumulus for answering folks' questions in the chat. Big thanks, as always, to our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, for running the technical operations of the broadcast behind the scenes. Most importantly, though, thanks to you for wherever you've been watching us from. We certainly appreciate your time and attention, and we look forward to welcoming you back in when next we have a mission to cover. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others. We will see you next time, folks. And until then, bye-bye. And P.S. Leroy Jenkins. Bye, folks.